Zach, a player originally from the Chicagoland area, but is a studying law, I believe a lawyer now, moved to Virginia, now playing on the East Coast. He'll be playing against Paul Hazlett and Green-White Aggro.
We'll see how close is this list to Andrew Stroud's list. He does have a lot of the same Andrew Stroud inspiration with numerous main deck pro blue creatures. The mono blue devotion matchup is not very good naturally, so he plays a couple Mistcutter Hydras and a couple copies of Skylasher. And otherwise, we've seen this recipe before. Soldier of the Pantheon, Experiment 1, Voice of Resurgence, Boon Satyr, Advent of the Worm, Call the Conclave.
Yeah, all right, and our match is underway. Turn 1, Zach is going to be on the play. He leads off with Thoughtseize, and he gets to see what his opponent is on. It is 3 lands, a Guildgate, a dual land, and a forest, and 4 cards. Rootborn defenses, Call the Conclave, Celestia Charm, and Banisher Priest. So he alerted his opponents on green-white and on a token theme.
And really critical for Paul in this opening hand. He has both colors of mana in his opening hand. The green-white deck's mana base is a little on the sketchy side, so having a Temple Garden or a Celestia Guildgate is really critical to tying these hands together.
And he's going to go ahead and take that turn 2 play. He's going to take the Call of the Conclave. And that will lead back. So he's going to start off on Celestia Guildgate, and we are back over to Jesse. And Temple of Silence will be the play. He's going to go ahead and keep on top, and he's going to go ahead and lead with a Duress.
So he will see that Paul has drawn a Boon Satyr for the turn.
Yeah, and actually, Duress, normally a card you only see out of the sideboard. Zach is playing the set of 4 Thoughtseize and 1 Duress in the main deck in one of those few flex slots that Mono Black has.
Yeah, Josh Cho also, who is either playing for top 8 right now or intentionally drawing in, also playing 2 main deck Duresses in his Orzhov mid-range deck as well. So seeing some main deck Duresses do well at the top tables today.
All right, so because now with none of his 2-drops, no Call of the Conclave, no Celestia Charm, Paul will just play Experiment 1 on turn 2, playing yet another land tapped, and that will lead Zach to play Nightveil Spectre.
So this is a pretty powerful opening here for Paul to potentially deploy a Banisher Priest next turn.
Yeah, and you have to think that Zach's probably, he's aware of the Banisher Priest, so he's somewhat, to a point, he's playing into it, right?
Yeah, his hand might not allow him to do anything else.
And we do have the 3rd land for Hazlett, and it looks like, yeah, quickly Banisher Priest will come down. It'll take out Nightveil Spectre, evolve Experiment 1, and Paul now has an attack assembled, at least for the moment.
But it is, of course, very dangerous to attack into, a potential removal spell in your Banisher Priest. It's something that Paul's going to have to be at least mindful of.
Right. Zach's going to he does have a removal spell. It's not targeted. He's going to main phase a Devour Flesh. Doing that main phase to prevent, I would imagine, any sort of flash creature from coming in or he doesn't want Experiment 1 to get any larger. It will take out Experiment 1 as Paul is pretty hesitant to give back the Banisher Priest.
So now Paul with a hand of Rootborn defenses, Boon Satyr, and he's just drawn a Soldier of Pantheon this turn.
Yeah, Soldier down, and that top card up there for Zach Jesse is Mutavault, so he does have a blocker right now. That's why Paul did not swing in with Banisher Priest. And more resource denial, it's going to be another Thoughtseize here. Paul debating whether or not he wants to play the Boon Satyr before Thoughtseize resolves.
Yeah, he was unwilling to attack with the Banisher Priest last turn and potentially have to use his Rootborn defenses to answer the Mutavault block. So it does seem like he does want to hold on to it, but now with Zach running low on cards, this is too good of a spot to add the Boon Satyr.
Yeah, and Rootborn will be taken, so Zach down to 1 card, Paul at 0. But Paul does have 8 power on the board, and with Zach at 14, that's a pretty quick clock he has.
And there's Voice of Resurgence off the top for Paul, which is actually excellent here, as he is clearly concerned about his Banisher Priest getting killed inside of combat, thus releasing the Nightveil Spectre. So Voice of Resurgence here before combat sort of forces Zach's hand.
Yeah, if Zach does have that instant speed kill spell, he's going to have to do it in response to Voice. Otherwise, the only kill spell he really has is Mutavault. And by his reaction, you can tell that his last card's not doing much for him.
Right. So we see Mutavault trade with the Boon Satyr there.
Now put Zach down to 12, so just 3 lands and 2 cards. 4th land was the card drawn, actually. And he is under the gun. It's 12 life, 6 power on the other side of the board.
Celestia Charm, the draw for Paul.
Yeah, the fact that it's just another instant speed creature really It's one of the strengths of this green-white aggro deck.
Oh, for a deck that's all creatures, it's actually quite tricky.
Yeah, it has, most of it populates, it plays instants, it has creatures that come back, creatures with protection, creatures with come into play abilities. There's a lot of utility in it.
Some haste even.
Yeah, another Thoughtseize. He's going to go ahead and see what's, I think it's going to be a Thoughtseize into a concession here.
Most
Just wants to
likely.
get information.
Again, if at the end of this round you're 7-3.
He's Celestia trying to make it 2-2, and that'll be game 1 in favor of Paul Hazlett.
No fuss, no muss. A very quick Selesnya beatdown right there.
Yeah, well, Zach's hand had a lot of disruption, but really just one creature in it. It's the kind of hand that I would assume would be very good against a control deck, but certainly against a low-end aggro deck, really is not a powerful keep.
Oh, yeah, a lot of discard spells into Night Veil Spectre is a very good recipe for beating a deck like Blue-White or Esper, but not really well suited to the Green-White matchup.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and go over to the sideboard. We'll start with the their traditional deck. We'll start with Zach's sideboard.
Well, he does have a pretty stock sideboard here. He has 2 Doomblades, a Pithy Needle, a Ratchet Bomb, 2 Dark Betrayals, 2 Farika's Cures, 2 Duresses, 2 Ereboses, and 3 Lifebane Zombies. Lifebane Zombie is basically the best card you could ask for in this matchup. No shortage of green and white targets. 3 power matches up nicely against a lot of Paul's threats, and it's also a very good card for going on the offensive if Zach's able to shift the tempo of the game around. That, alongside the additional removal spells of the Doomblades, is what I expect Zach to bring in.
Yeah, I expect him to do the additional Ratchet Bomb because of the token theme that Paul's deck has also. Cards he doesn't really want, as we saw, kind of Thoughtseize is a little bit of a loser in this matchup. On Paul's end, he doesn't have too much for the matchup. He has a God's Willing, which he can use to protect himself from what he has to assume is more removal spells from Zach. Other than that, he has Rootborn Defenses, and really not too much else. He has Unflinching Courage. That's something you wouldn't really want to play against a deck that's going to overload on removal. And a lot of his other hate is for blue decks. He has more Skylashers, more Mistcutter Hydras.
Yeah, I think you're also going to see the Last Breaths come in. We saw Andrew Stroud sideboard in Last Breath against mono black decks quite a bit. It's the answer to Night Veil Spectre, Grey Merchant, and most critically Pack Rat. In my opinion, the green-white deck's biggest problem in the matchup is that it's very hard for it to race an unchecked Pack Rat. The deck's basically just attacking on the ground, and so Pack Rat just gets too big too fast.
Yeah.
So even though Last Breaths are not the type of card you would want to be bringing in when you are the beatdown deck in a matchup, the threat of Pack Rat makes it so the green-white deck's hand's a little forced here.
All right, so we do see. Yeah. So is that? Would you say with Pack Rat, is Pack Rat just a problem in general for the green-white aggro deck, or only when they're on the draw? Can an aggressive curve race it on the play?
Sometimes, yeah. But even when you're on the play, it's not a card that you want to see.
Okay.
I mean, we saw Andrew Stroud play a lot in Indianapolis. We had him in the finals against Owen Turtenwald, and Pack Rat basically did him in. Every other aspect of the mono black devotion deck he had covered. He had a very fast clock. He had a lot of haste, a lot of tricks inside of combat. He even has Selesnya Charm as an answer to Desecration Demon. Most beatdown decks do not have such a card, but Pack Rat was just too much.
Yeah. Certainly he has not very much removal, so that would be something in favor. Any deck without much removal, it seems like Pack Rat's a great play against.
Yeah. I mean, when you're on the play, you have access to something like turn 3 Banisher Priest, which can remove the Pack Rat. Even if they kill it, if you're backing up the draw with other tempo plays, it might be enough to race it, but definitely not a card that green-white aggro wants to see.
Yeah. So we'll be going into game 2. On Zach's side then, so you said, Pack Rat certainly is an important part of the matchup. Outside of Pack Rat, what is he looking for then? Is it just all removal?
A lot of removal. A lot of removal.
So how does he deal with then what about cards like Voice of Resurgence, these removal-proof cards?
Oh, it's just a challenge. I mean, you can make combat really tough, and Desecration Demon has a role there. Cards like Night Veil Spectre match up well against some of the bodies and that sort of thing, but every Voice of Resurgence is just pretty tough. It puts a lot of pressure on you to have Pack Rat, because Pack Rat's the card that can invalidate all those annoying, durable against removal type of threats. Everything that's on the ground gets locked up pretty fast.
Yeah. So, but Desecration Demon just gets tapped too often?
And Selesnya Charm is a card as well in the matchup.
Right. Okay.
So, if you're just joining us, round 10 here in Baltimore, Patty Sullivan, Matthias Hunt. Last round of the Swiss before we break for top 8. We have Paul Hazlett up a game with green-white aggro, taking on Zach Jesse playing mono black devotion.
And we see right now, remember, this game will be for a spot in top 8. The loser of the game will fall out of top 8. We see game 1 pretty quickly go to Paul. Zach had kept a good control hand with lots of discard, but very threat light, and a timely Banisher Priest was really able to take all the gas out of the engine.
Yeah. The green-white deck actually has a lot of times where it looks almost like a red or black-based aggro deck where it uses pump spells and haste creatures to finish out the game. It doesn't look like a conventional green-white deck in a lot of respects.
All right. And we have a keep from Zach, a keep from Paul. We are underway. Turn 1 is Swamp from Zach. He will go ahead and pass back. No Thoughtseize. Presumably he doesn't have them anymore, though.
Yeah, it's really hard to break up the green-white deck's curve because it's so redundant.
Yeah. And we'll see if he has the Pack Rat. He does not. That'll just pass back to Hazlett. And that looks like it opened the door for Call of the Conclave. Call of the Conclave from Paul. He has any number of 2-drops. He has Call, Skylasher, Celestia Charm, and he will go ahead and go with the 3/3 Centaur to start with. Zach had left up mana for Farika's Cure. This will be a pretty good way to play around that.
Yeah. Of course, he has Doomblade and Devour Flesh here, but just draws and says go. So really good start for Paul.
Yeah, turn 3 is going to go ahead and be Lifebane Zombie.
Lifebane Zombie is so good in this matchup. It's really hard for it to not trade with 2 cards.
All right, so we are going to get a look at Paul's hand. It is Banisher Priest, Boon Satyr, Skylasher, Boon Satyr, Rootborn Defenses, and Celestia Charm. So Zach will have a choice of 4 different cards to take with Lifebane Zombie. Presumably, I would think he doesn't worry too much about Banisher Priest here. It's a pretty risky play of Paul to put Banisher Priest on Lifebane Zombie.
Yeah, but the rest of Paul's hand is pretty anemic here. I mean, he just kind of has random dudes without much utility.
Some 4/2s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also of note is that Paul doesn't have another land yet, so he could, without the top deck of a land, this could be a pretty rough game for him.
Yeah. It's interesting. The cards he actually cares about most in this hand, I believe, are the spells. Rootborn Defenses and Celestia Charm are both very threatening cards here.
And he actually is going to go ahead and take Banisher Priest.
He could be trying to set up all sorts of creatures here.
Well, it might be these anticipating just trading that Centaur token for the Lifebane Zombie, in which case Banisher Priest would be a pretty good card. Right, he does make the trade. And it'll be replaced with another Centaur from Call of the Conclave, because Zach aware that Paul drew it that turn. And that means there will be no land.
And you may want to ask, why didn't he use Celestia Charm there to trample over for 4 damage and keep a Centaur in play anyway? The answer is the threat of Desecration Demon. He may want to save that Celestia Charm to potentially kill a 6/6 flyer.
Yeah. So right now, the Celestia Charm is more valuable than the Call of the Conclave.
Especially with Zach taking the Banisher Priest out of that last hand. It sort of signals that he's trying to set up a creature.
All right, so 4th land from Zach. We will see what he goes with. It looks like he actually may have a Thoughtseize in hand, so he may have kept some number of those in. Yeah, he's going to go ahead and lead off on that Thoughtseize. That'll put him down to 18. We have Rootborn Defenses, Boon Satyr, Celestia Charm, Skylasher. Immediately the Celestia Charm's taken. That, to me at least, suggests a Desecration Demon.
Yeah. It also really puts Paul to the test. He has to draw a 3rd land this turn for his hand to do anything.
Yeah, there's no more 2-mana spells left in it. The Centaur is going to swing. Now the question, did he hit the land? The answer, yes, he did. It was a forest. And he's going to go ahead and likely pass the turn and Boon Satyr. Or yes, he does also have Rootborn, so he has a choice of which one he'd like to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of it just depends on what Zach does with his turn.
All right, 5th land into play, and tapping 4, we should expect a 6/6 flyer here, and it is Desecration Demon for Zach. And now the largest creature on the table belongs to him.
I would imagine that we're going to play Boon Satyr here at the end of the turn because we can untap and attack next turn with everything. Reuse Rootborn Defenses to prevent a creature from dying in combat, add an additional Centaur, and get across some damage.
It looks like remaining in Zach's hand is a Grey Merchant of Asphodel, along with 2 other cards. Demon will go a long way, but at least until he gets a couple other threats, it seems like the Demon's going to have to go ahead and stay home and defend for a while.
Yeah, but the Grey Merchants allow Zach to turn it on, start pressuring Paul.
And we do see, as you said, the end step Boon Satyr there from Paul. Just the 4-2. Draws, it looks like he's drawn another Rootborn. So he has at least the first one, and we'll see if he goes ahead and makes that aggressive attack. It seems like his options are to make that attack or otherwise just wait and play another Boon Satyr.
Yeah, that seems like a really good spot to stick the Rootborn defenses while Zach's ability to kill the token at instant speed is not there. He has to continue to add to his board here.
Right, so that, yeah, allows him to push damage and add to the board, and it's going to be exactly that. Both of them swing in. Boon Satyr as a 4-2, Centaur as a 3-3. I'm assuming he'll just block the 4-2. You know, he doesn't have to actually play around Celestine Charm, because Celestine Charm would have been cast on the Demon if he had it. And it will just be the Rootborn. So 3 into Zach puts him at 12, and another Centaur is populated.
It's really easy there for Zach to tell himself a story that the trick that he has there is Rootborn defenses. So.
Right, well, I mean, he knows that he has the first one.
Right.
It's the second one that's going to catch him by surprise. And it looks like we may have a pair of Gray Merchants on Zach's side. With the Mana to cast it, he's going to go ahead and start by swinging the Desecration Demon. That's for 6. That'll put Paul down to 14, and it'll be followed up by Gray Merchant. So a 10 damage turn. This one gains Zach 4 life. He goes up to 16. Paul down to 10, and if the last card is another Gray Merchant for Zach, he actually has a lethal attack next turn.
And it's one of those things, you know, you can't sit back all day against the green-white deck. They have too many tricks, so I like Zach shifting into beatdown mode, the Gray Merchants allowing him to take that path.
Yeah, and it's interesting just how quickly Zach was able to transition roles. You know, he had no creatures on 3 mana, and then 2 turns later, he has his opponent at 10. And a swing with Paul's team is going to be both Centaurs and a Boon Satyr. Zach was content to let the Centaur bounce off the Gray Merchant. He will take 7 and drop to 9. And we have yet to see is whether or not Paul will make a sacrifice to the Demon. He can play Skylasher, call the Conclave, another Boon Satyr. My guess is he's going to Boon Satyr here, so then he can play 2 creatures if he draws a land.
Yep, to try to play Call the Conclave and Skylasher in the same turn.
Right. And we see just that. Passes his turn on 3. And we are back over to Zach. And we'll see what he chooses to do here. Yeah.
I mean, the first order of business is just announcing an attack and see what Paul does about this Desecration Demon.
Yeah, I think he may have drawn a Thoughtseize, so he's debating whether or not he wants to Thoughtseize pre-combat right now.
Thoughtseize is a pretty dangerous play, though.
Just because of the life loss?
Yeah.
Yeah, putting yourself down to 7 when your opponent has, you know, with the creatures Paul has on the board, 7's a really dangerous life total because it actually it requires you to leave back another blocker. So my guess is Zach's gone to attacks here. Skylasher flashed into play for Paul Hazlett. It's going to tap the Desecration Demon. And we did not see an attack here. Yeah, because it doesn't actually change the clock. So another Gray Merchant of Asphodel. This one's for 6. Will drain Paul down to 4. Zach goes back up to 15.
Well, it does change the clock a little bit, insofar as it would knock Paul to 2, and then Zach's looking at 4 lethal attackers next turn.
So you want to do you'd think you'd make the attack there?
I believe so. It's very hard to imagine that you die on the way back.
Yeah,
Going up to 15 with a blocker.
There'd have to be a lot in Paul's hand for that to happen.
And you kind of have an idea what the contents are. It's just, you know about Rootborn defenses, so that's at least one card that doesn't really change anything here.
Well, he doesn't know about the Rootborn. He knows about the Skylasher.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, because that was the second Rootborn.
He knows about the Boon Satyr.
Right. We'll see attacks here from Paul Hazlett. It's going to be just Boon Satyr. A little bit of a cheeky attack here. I think he's trying to draw the Gray Merchant block.
Well, he certainly can't sit on his hands all day, so he's got to make some inroads.
Yeah, if he swings at 3-3, he would just draw a double block from Jesse. And now, yeah, Zach is debating if he wants to try to... I mean, the attack doesn't make sense unless there's a Rootborn, right?
Yeah.
He's going to go ahead and make the block. No Rootborn defenses for Paul.
Yeah, that seemed like a good spot to land defenses. Hard to imagine it doing much more than making a creature and saving a creature in this spot.
Yeah, and especially because it gets you your advantage now as opposed to later. It allows you to push more damage. We will see. It looks like he's committed to the Boonsatyr line then. And he's actually going to call the Conclave post-combat. So if he did it the other way, then now even if he top decks a land, he's still only on 1 spell as opposed to 2. But 3 blockers, 3 attackers. He's going to get another edict out. It's just going to announce attacks. Sacrifice will be made. Zach's hands plenty of cards. Looks like he has another Mutavault, along with 3 other cards. We'll see some of those. He's going to lead off with Thoughtseize. Now he knows about the second Rootborn.
Yep.
Which my guess is that'll be the card he takes here too. It is close, because with 1 more mana, Paul can bestow the Boonsatyr.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I like taking Boonsatyr here. That I think, as you have the ground pretty well locked up. Boonsatyr is potentially threatening, but allowing him to make an additional Centaur and Alpha Strike / Suicide in isn't very good for him with a 2/4 Merchant on defense.
Yeah. So Zach's just going to go ahead and play this very defensively. He's just going to lock up the ground by playing Pack Rat and slowly let Desecration Demon Abyss Paul until Zach has a lethal attack.
Yep. No rush. And Pack Rat adds another dimension of
really
threatening behavior.
Yeah. Especially with double Mutavault from Zach. That's the Pack Rat will get big in a hurry. Let's see. I believe Farika's Cure the discard, and he's going to go ahead and make another rat.
And it's hard to imagine Paul being able to come back from this spot. Too many lethal attackers.
Yeah, right now it's both the rats are lethal and the demon is lethal. Zach's aware that there's a Rootborn defenses, so he still may just edict to this turn by trying to swing the demon as opposed to swinging the team for now, but that certainly would only be true for 1 turn. And he still has the duress. All right.
That's it.
Yeah, Paul doesn't even want to show it. So game 2 goes to Zach Jesse. He evens it up. These players will be headed to game 3 once again with a spot in the top 8 on the line.
It looks like Zach has a lot of discard in his deck. He's at least kept it into the duress, possibly brought in his additional copies alongside Thoughtseize.
Well, my guess is that just because you have 1 duress in the main deck, I would think the number either goes up or down after sideboard. It seems unlikely it'll just stay at 1 duress.
I don't know. It depends if he has a list of cards that he says, I have to remove these from my deck because they're inefficient in the matchup, then you might end up with an odd number of a certain card in your deck. Because you don't want all of them, but they're better than, let's say he imagines Underworld Connections or Devour Flesh is too bad in the matchup. That could lead you to a spot where you only have 1 or 2 leftover slots and those become duresses.
Sure, and I would guess Underworld Connections has been boarded out. We saw almost all the other cards in his deck hit the table this matchup.
Yeah, and Devour Flesh is pretty poor in the matchup as well. It's basically blamed by Voice of Resurgence. The green-white aggro deck has a lot of little creatures to add to the table, so edicts are really hard to use profitably against green-white aggro as opposed to, say, red-green aggro, which is trying to ramp into one big thing.
So going back, we know he's boarded in Life Banes. We assume he's boarded in Doom Blades, Cures, and Ratchet Bomb. Thinking Underworld Connections has come out, and maybe even Hero's Downfall, just as it's a more expensive kill spell.
And possibly Nightveil Spectre. I mean, that's another card that doesn't really attack or block that well.
Yeah, it's a 2/3 for 3 at its core it's a 2/3 for 3, and I don't think its ability is as relevant in this matchup.
Yeah, the colors don't overlap, so.
Now, what are your thoughts on boarding out Underworld Connections in the matchup? Certainly it's slow in this against this green-white deck, but especially when the green-white has a lot of inherent 2-for-1 in its creatures, I almost feel like being able to draw extra cards is something you may need to do to take the late game.
It's really curious, you would think on paper, yeah, absolutely, you just want a bunch of Doom Blades and removal spells, and then you get your card advantage online. The matchup's actually very fast and tempo-oriented, and some of the black deck's best cards in the matchup are actually creatures and not removal spells. Green-white deck's fairly durable against removal, but it's cards like Pack Rat, Desecration Demons in some spots, you know, engineering board states with Grave Merchants. Those are actually how the black deck wins the matchup. So even though it looks like it would be on paper, I don't think it's actually just a Doomblade card advantage type of matchup for mono black. The green-white deck's just a little too resilient to removal.
Yeah. So he has no time for things like Underworld
Yeah,
Connections.
the games are fast.
So he has to stabilize with Pack Rat. That's
Yeah.
the faster way to do it.
The games are really fast. It looks like both players are keeping 7.
All right, so Paul's on the play. This is going to be Experiment 1. Once again, we'll see if Zach has a turn 1 discard spell. Looks like he does have the Duress once again. And we'll see what cards he can keep in Paul's hand.
Rolls up the sleeves.
All right, this is the game. This one is for top 8 right now. This is going to lead up on Temple of Silence. Keeps the card on top. Looks like he also has a Ratchet Bomb in his hand, which I do like in the matchup. Second land is going to be a Soldier of the Pantheon, which puts a counter on Experiment 1. This should all be pretty good for Ratchet Bomb.
Yeah, and it's these kind of draws where I feel it's really challenging to just beat the green-white deck with removal. The creatures need to be part of this game plan as well.
All right, and turn 2, that is the Ratchet Bomb. Looks like it's going to be set on 1. Hopefully he's going to hope to get both creatures with it. Paul can defend that by evolving Experiment 1 this turn.
But it cannot, as he's missing double green for the Boon Satyrs in his hand. The Banisher Priest he has does not evolve. And so this Ratchet Bomb is going to do a lot of work here.
Yeah, absolutely. Third land is white, so we see a swing for 4. It puts Zach down to 14. And that may be it for the turn. So yeah, Paul has Banisher Priest, but I don't know if he has another creature to commit to the board. We see it looks like a pair of Boon Satyrs and the Banisher Priest.
Yeah.
And Zach all too happy to take up the Ratchet Bomb.
And this is one of the biggest problems in my mind with this green-white aggro deck is the mana base just leaves a lot to be desired.
All right, Duress will get played and Bricks this time. Boon Satyr, Plains, Boon Satyr, Banisher Priest. Yeah, and so if we're wondering about Duress, Paul's deck plays in the main 13 spells. He probably has 15 after sideboard after boarding in 2 more Rootborn defenses. So Duress certainly is a reasonable card. It's not great, but it might be if Zach thinks the matchup's just actually that fast. He just wants 1 mana cards, things that he can play.
And some of those, and you know, Duress also does a very good job of setting up Desecration Demon is another thing as well.
Yeah, and this is a great board state for Zach now. He swept away the board. Paul has nothing he can cast, and Zach is sitting here on a Devour Flesh in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now Boon Satyr actually does a good job of playing around the Devour Flesh.
Yeah, it definitely forces Zach to use his mana awkwardly in certain spots, but again, you know, he has
Dirty.
Does not
he has
have double
Lightbane
green.
Zombie. Yeah, he's gonna go ahead and take Boon Satyr, sees another Plains drawn by Paul. And now Paul can't, like I said, Paul can't even cast the Banisher Priest here. That's just too dangerous.
Another poor draw for Paul as Advent of the Worm comes off the top.
It's double green. Oh wow, I think he's gonna go for Banisher Priest here. Zach is only far too happy to let that happen. And this is gonna be pretty gross. All right, we start with, Zach will get all of Paul's cards this turn and still have a 3-1 in play.
So he's worried that, I believe Zach is worried that Paul has drawn Selesnya Charm because otherwise this play is just pretty 101.
Yeah, so he's gonna go with the Farika's Cure instead of the Devour.
Right.
And Lifebane comes back. Lifebane takes the other Boon Satyr. And Paul left with just Advent of the Worm.
So we know there's a Thoughtseize left over in Zach's hand, so this is basically green mana or bust.
Well, the thing is, it's just bust or bust. So if Paul doesn't hit the green mana, the Advent will get Thoughtseize. If he does hit the green mana, the Worm's gonna get Devour Flesh.
Sure, but at least now he has double green in play. Other Advents might be live draws.
Right, he bricks the Thoughtseize. If Paul manages to empty his hand, that Thoughtseize is probably never gonna get equity as a card.
Yeah.
But with very few chances to draw here, Yeah, Paul gets Celestia Charm, but that's not enough. And Zach firmly gets in the driver's seat here. He swings with Lifebane Zombie. Now his first points of damage are coming across. Paul down to 17. And that'll be Thoughtseize. It'll take care of Advent of the Worm, leaving Paul with just a Celestia Charm. Have to think he's taking Advent here. Or maybe
Yeah,
not even. Maybe why not?
Yeah, he has so much removal in his hand, it's pretty narrow. I mean,
it just doesn't matter. Yeah, he's just going to take the Celestia Charm.
yeah, he has the Advent covered.
Yep. I mean, I think the real punchline is he's just got to be thrilled to see this hand.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, he's going to go ahead and take the card that Paul can cast. He takes Celestia Charm. And leaves Paul with just an uncastable hand. And the draw for the turn is Celestia Guildgate. That's the green mana he needs, but it's going to be a turn in the works as it comes into play tapped. 3 more puts Paul down to 14, and the clock is ticking.
Yeah. Zach just so far out in front right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's now making decisions. You know, he's debating whether he wants to play Grey Merchant or leave up Devour Flesh. You know, he's just got great plays going both ways.
Yeah.
Oh, he's going to go ahead and start with Desecration
Sure.
Demon, which he also has.
Also, pretty reasonable play here.
Yeah, another Guildgate's the draw for Paul. He will pass. And this is 9 damage, 9 unblockable damage, actually. He'll go ahead and swing 9. That drops Paul to 5. And Zach will pass the turn. This is going to get hit by, I would actually think, a Hero's Downfall. Okay, we are going this before attacks. We're seeing, no, he's at 5. End step, Worm's getting made.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're still in combat right now or if Zach has passed his turn. As the Grey Merchant in his hand is lethal.
Right. Either way, I think Zach's winning on his next turn.
Right.
Right, and then, or right now, Grey Merchant will go ahead and drain, and that will be the game. Zach Jesse, 2-1, defeats Paul Hazlett, and he moves on to this top 8 with Mono Black Devotion.
Yeah, the green-white aggro deck, we have seen it before, doomed by its mana base. If he's able to play that Boon Satyr there on turn 3, he evolves his